My name's Steve Wraith.
And I'm Malcolm McDonald.
And this is NUFC Matters. Welcome along to NUFC Matters at the Dog and Parrot. Once again, put your hands together for Supermac, Malcolm McDonald.
Oh, thank you all very much. Thank you.
We are live in the Dog and Parrot today, best pre-match venue in the town, and it's got some great food, some great beer, and some good crack. Malcolm, let's go back to last weekend. We're sat in here. We predicted a win in the FA Cup. It was a rare event, getting through to the next round in the FA Cup, but unfortunately, we might still be in the hat for the next round, but we didn't quite do it. We've got to go to a replay.
Do we have to go back to last weekend? Oh my word. It was absolutely awful. I said to the, during the second half, I said to John Gibson, who was sat next to me, I said, if somebody didn't know which side was which, and they had to state who was the Premiership side, they would have chosen Oxford. I thought Newcastle was so poor, so bad, and it just didn't seem as if they had a clue how to get out of the rut that they found themselves in. Bless him, I'm looking at Sean Longstaff, who is he's a very genuine young kid, and he's just struggling to find his way just at the moment. And I was surprised that he was playing and not his brother Matty, who's grabbed it much more powerfully than his brother Sean, but it's all got to be done again and down there, and I would think that the Oxford confidence will be sky high, because you could sense that as the game wore on into the second half, that they realised that Newcastle were there for the taking, and that will give them huge confidence when Newcastle have to travel down there in the week.
Joe Linton, again we've talked about him virtually every week because he's a £40 million man. He scored one goal. He managed to score twice last week. Yep, they were both offside, but he did manage to score 2 goals last week. So there's signs there that our midfielders are learning how to pass to him, and the finishes weren't bad. He just needs to now start concentrating on staying offside.
Yes, that would help immensely. He still isn't looking anything like a centre forward to me, even though that he scored those couple that were offside. I'm losing patience with him, and I just feel that he really isn't good enough for the Premiership. I don't think what I'm not seeing from the fella, I'm not seeing him at 6'3", looking like he's 6'3" and bigger than everybody else around. He sort of hunches over for me, and I saw him sprint once in all the time that he's been there. And I thought, why aren't you doing that all the time? That's how you should be going into the penalty area, on a sprint. But he sort of ambles in, stands still. There's no real movement, and I don't think that he's a centre forward up in his head.
Obviously, a lot of people are saying that they should get an ex-striker in, like an Alan Shearer or yourself, to go in and give him some tips. It did look this week as if he'd taken some tips, Malcolm. He's dyed his hair grey.
Yeah, well, we're not sure which colour Alan Shearer is, do we, at the moment? So he's got to be copying me. I rather than hair colour, I wish that he would copy the mentality that I took with me onto the field, and that was that when I walked onto a field, I was determined to have 6 attempts at goal in the first half, and so It didn't matter if I missed.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if I hit the woodwork. It didn't matter if the keeper saved it, because when you're getting goal chances all the while and you're getting your shots in, that should build your confidence, not lower it. And I'm watching Joe Linton, and I've had the impression for a long while now that he's actually becoming afraid to shoot. And what he shouldn't be is afraid to miss. That's the key to being a top quality centre forward and goal scorer.
I mean, joking aside, well, I've talked about this, about you be willing to go up and have a chat with him on the training ground, try to give him some pointers. I'm sure Alan Shearer, if he had time, would do exactly the same. When you arrived at the club, tell us that little story, because I think it's relevant about who was actually there on the day that you turned up to make your signing and have the press conference.
Jackie Mills, yeah. Yeah, when I first arrived, I had signed for Newcastle on the Friday down in London, but the transfer wasn't complete until I'd been in the buying club's medical room and passed the medical. And so I had to come up here on the Monday, and I have to tell you that I came up in a Rolls Royce. It was actually owned by the sponsor of Luton Town Football Club. His name was George Twigg, and he sent me up, chauffeur driven by one of his young directors at his car showrooms. And as we came across the Tyne Bridge, and he stopped and he said, nip out the front. He said, get in the back. So I got in the back, and he put a chauffeur's cap on, and he drove up to St James Park, came through the gates and went very slowly around the car park, making a big scene for everybody. And on the steps was a big gaggle of press awaiting my arrival. And so he parked right in front of them, and he said, sit where you are. And he walked the long way round the Rolls Royce and got to my door, opened it, and out I stepped. And a voice from the very middle of this pack of press guys, who were all stood there with microphones and notepads and pencils and cameras flashing, this voice said, this is the first time I've ever seen a player actually arrive in his signing on fee. Yeah, I thought, I like the humour up here. And so in we went, and I passed the medical. I'd never missed a game through injury up till that point. And I did the press conference, I was talking to the press, but then all of a sudden they started to part in very respectful fashion, and through that pack walked a very, very smart but casually dressed guy, and he came up to me and he said, Malcolm, welcome to St James Park. He said, welcome to Tyneside, welcome to the North East. He said, if you do for us what you were doing at Luton, everybody's going to love you. And he said, oh, by the way, my name is Jackie Milburn. And I said, well, I knew that, Jackie. Yes, I watched you very carefully playing for Newcastle down at Craven Cottage over the seasons. And I said, thank you very much. He said, now, let's get down to the serious business. He said, you need to get moved up into the area as quickly as you can, get settled so you can concentrate on your football. And I said, well, I was planning to come up Friday to do some house hunting. He said, good, meet me here at 10 o'clock in the morning and I'll show you around. And so on Friday morning, we set off. I was a passenger in Jackie Milburn's car, and the great man, we drove out of St James Park, turned right, and then he turned left, and he sort of sped through Fenham, and we came then across the town moor and into Gosforth, and he showed me Gosforth, and he showed me Jesmond, and then we got onto the coast road, and we were heading out towards the coast, and he sort of bypassed Wallsend, and continued, and we went through North Shields, Tynemouth, Cullercoats, Whitley Bay, through Seaton Sluice, went round Blythe, and continued north, and there was a road sign that said Ashington 1 mile. And all of a sudden, Jackie's arm came out across my face, and he was pointing out the passenger door, and he said, "Well, you soft southerner, what's that?" And I looked, and it was a floodlight pylon, but instead of having lights on the top, it had a wheel. And I looked and I thought, oh dear, I'm under pressure here. I really don't want to be seen as a soft southerner. And so I looked at it and I said, I'm really not sure, Jackie, but I'll hazard a guess, and I wouldn't mind betting that it's called a pit wheel. He said, oh, so you're not so daft after all. He said, but that's not any old pit wheel. He said, that's the pit wheel that sent me, when I just left school, 1 mile underground. He said, and I was grafting and working. I was there with my family, with my friends. We all worked down there in that pit. He said, and I was the lucky one of everybody, because Newcastle United, they took me out of the pit. They put me in football kit. They got me fit. They got me playing. And he said, the rest is history. He said, I won cup finals with Newcastle. I went and played for England. I've managed. And he said, the game of football has been very, very good to me. And he said, and still, down there are my family and my friends, and they're still working, they're still grafting 1 mile underground. He said, and they come out at the end of their week, and they are black from head to foot, and they get home, they get showered, and they get the week's grime off them, and then the following morning they get on the bus and head into the centre of Newcastle. They'll have a couple of pints before they head up to St James Park, and they'll be there at 2 o'clock, and they'll be creating the atmosphere for an hour, awaiting the arrival of you players out in the field. And when you do come out, he said, they will give you such an ovation. Now, he said, remember this. Every time you get the ball, you've got to think, score a goal. He said, and you've got to take all the defenders on. Keep running at them, running at them. They're going to tackle you, they're going to boot you, they're going to kick you, they're going to elbow you. But he said, you've got to keep going at them all the time. Don't give them a break. And when you get beyond them, you've got the keeper then to beat, and you've got to start flying the shots in at him. He's going to save some are going to go wide, some will hit the woodwork. He said, but sooner or later the goals will start going in, and you have got to be on the end of that ball in the area to finish it all off and make it worthwhile for the other players to get it to you. There you go, he said, it's as simple as that. Well, it's not that simple, and Joe Linton is finding it out. But if he had that talk from Jackie Milburn, I'm sure that something would sink in and he would be a much better player. Jackie Milburn, he didn't improve me as a player. What he did, he improved my mind. I understood exactly what my job was about. And that is important. Joe Linton doesn't look to me as if he knows what his job is.
I think that deserves a round of applause. And I think, to be honest, if Joe Linton did listen to Malcolm, maybe that would sink in. Let's look now at the transfer window, which is now firmly closed. Not only did we go out to the EU, but we also went out to the transfer window without a striker. Strange, I thought. I've got to be honest, I thought it was a good window. Danny Rose, you know, an England international coming in. Lazaro gives us another option, of course, in midfield. Bentaleb, who we saw last week, another midfielder, but no forward, Malcolm. Did that surprise you?
No, because I'm not surprised that he bought defenders and midfielders because they're the only ones that can score.
Yeah.
And so he might not have brought forwards in, but he's maybe brought in goal scorers. Yes, I was, to be honest, somewhat surprised. But I always think that a winter is not the time. You won't find the availability of real key important players. They're sort of fillers at Christmas time and in the new year, and so I have to say that I was very pleased to see Danny Rose come in, and I have a little feeling, from what I've heard, that he was the one that instigated the move in the first place, and well done for Steve Bruce to jumping on straight in on this. And I've got a feeling that Danny Rose, he will want to stay beyond the end. He will want to get Newcastle to do a deal and become a permanent fixture here. And I wouldn't say no, that's for sure.
Takeover, week 2. I've lost the count of the amount of times we've talked about the takeover in the various bars that we worked in. But here we are again. The silence is deafening on this one, but there was an interesting comment by Steve Bruce yesterday at the press conference. Yes, there was. He said, takeover. I've been assured there is no takeover. And it was mentioned about Amanda Staveley not sort of putting it all together or whatever. And for a manager to come out and get himself involved, I found that rather strange. But then it's all rather strange with all that's going on. You know, that when it broke, for heaven's sake, through the Wall Street Journal. You know, what a place for it. Well, how have they got that kind of information? And over there in America, with what they know about football, how would they have known it was important news? You know? So the whole thing is, it's making me feel that I'm not too sure which way it's really going to happen. Because the one thing that really did impress me was that the first quote from Mike Ashley, following it breaking from the Wall Street Journal, was that he was angry, really angry. When stuff has hit the newspapers before, he's never said a word, he's not been angry at all, he's not wanted to comment, and that all turned out that he was planting the situation. Him showing anger this time, that got me thinking, he's not created this. It's coming from elsewhere. And so, I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to wait and see what happens. I would love it to happen. I really would. I think that Newcastle, they need to find a new direction from the one that they've been on with Mike Ashley. You know, that Newcastle United has basically been financing Sports Direct and the various other companies that he's got, and his companies have not been successful whatsoever recently over in Australia and over in the States, and so he's needed a Newcastle United to keep feeding regular monies into it, and Newcastle have done just that. And so I would like to see genuine people come in with real money and say, right, let's go for it. You know, let's at least go and challenge for Europe, and certainly challenge for cups as well. And I hope that everybody within the club is going to take this replay in this coming week very, very seriously, and that they're not going to do a clop. We're rapidly approaching Kevin Keegan's birthday, or as girls know it, Valentine's Day. A winter break, it's a strange time to have one, and as you've just mentioned, Jurgen Klopp's not very happy about it, to the point where he's not actually going to turn up at the FA Cup replay with Liverpool against Shrewsbury, and he's going to put out his young'uns again. So, are you a fan? Are you an advocate of the winter break, and especially putting it in February?
No, I'm not a fan at all. Good heavens above, we used to play far more games than they're playing these days, and there was never a winter break. And remember what the pitches were like back then.
Yep.
They could be thick of mud for most of the winter. These days the pitches are so pristine,
Yep.
all the season through. It's amazing. What Klopp is doing is it's a sort of European thing.
Yep.
It's very German, where they do have a winter break over there, and it's been a regular thing. But the FA, they really cannot get anything properly organised. If you're going to have a winter break, everybody's got to have it equally.
Yep.
You can't just start sliding replays into it. Mm-hmm. That's balmy. Well, it's typical FA that they get it wrong yet again. That they have that they just haven't got it all timed out. And well, I hope it's an experiment on their part, and that they're not going to see it successful, that they're going to treat it as a failure and not do it again.
Norwich City are in town today. I suppose you could say it's a 6-pointer. I mean, Newcastle are, they're far enough away from them at the minute, but a win for Norwich today, and Newcastle losing to one of their rivals, suddenly it gets a bit tighter. But it is a big game. It's a must-win game for Newcastle. Norwich are coming off the back of a cup win away last week at Burnley, albeit against 10 men. So, how do you see today's game going?
Well, I thought that the defeat of 3-0 down at Norwich earlier in the season, it wasn't only the worst result that Newcastle have had, but the worst performance. That is, until I saw the Oxford game here last week. This is a vital game for Newcastle. It is an absolute must-win game, and so I am looking forward to seeing the whole attitude of the 11 players out in the field today. They've got to go and get to grips with Norwich, in particular Pookie, who he just ran riot down at Carrow Road against Newcastle earlier in the season. Ran riot. And I hope that the defence get themselves sorted and deal effectively with him and any other threats that come along. The midfield have got to start to dominate games. They can't, and I know it's difficult for them because they're feeling that there's not a lot happening up front. They want to see a lot more going on up there so that they can with confidence play the ball forward and start making runs to get themselves into the action. But they're worried that they're going to knock it into Joe Linton and it's going to come straight back. And so they daren't make a forward run for fear of getting caught out. But this is looking at Newcastle. With Norwich, I would think that they are looking at this and saying, did you see Newcastle against Oxford last week? They were absolute rubbish. We've got every chance today. And at the same time, they know that here we are just moving into February, and that gives Norwich 3 full months to get themselves out of the relegation area, and they need to start winning as of now. And so they are going to be flying this afternoon. But I really seriously hope that Newcastle, that they're going to deal with that and go out and play themselves and get themselves ready to get into the next round of the cup by seeing Oxford off in midweek. And so 2 vital games, and also that with the draw, that takes us to West Brom if we do go through next Tuesday. And I can honestly say that in the 1974 FA Cup run that I experienced with Newcastle, when we played West Brom and we beat them 3-0 at the Hawthorns, that was the best team performance I've ever played in. It was absolutely incredible to be a part of that performance and victory. And the irony of it was that Terry Hibbitt got injured very early on and he had to go off, and Jimmy Smith came on, Jinky, and he was just absolutely sensational. Best game he's ever played, and he was the linchpin for the whole of the Newcastle United team, all having blinders. And each of the forwards scored, myself, John Tudor and Stuart Barraclough. That's the kind of neat performance you want, where everybody's getting in on the act. I hope they can get in on the act this afternoon.
One thing about the team selection, Matt Ritchie, obviously Danny Rose has come in, he's been utilised as a wing back. Where do you think Steve Bruce is going to fit Matt Ritchie into this setup with the players that he's brought in? Midfield's becoming a bit overcrowded with no Shelby's now out injured, but where would you say that Steve Bruce should look at playing Matt Ritchie? He might have to go with a different formation to fit him back in, or do you think he may be the one who has to make way for the new players coming in?
Well, Matt Ritchie's been played out of position in that left back slot, and I would much rather him in the side, even at the expense of somebody else. And I really wouldn't see a problem at that, because I think he gives absolutely everything, every single game. He's a wonderful influence out on the pitch, gets everybody buzzing and going. So I really don't see the sense of dropping him. But yes, he's got to move. But Ritchie can quite easily go and play on the right-hand side. And if I were to drop anybody, my personal choice would be I'd drop Hayden. I can't get away with how little he gets involved in the game. I know he recently scored, but I would drop Hayden, and there's no reason why that Matt Ritchie can't play in that sort of wide rightish position. They don't need a right back as such with the 3 centre halves that they're playing, and so you could play Matt Ritchie along there, and I'd drop Hayden for him.
Okay, competition time. Can we have the t-shirt, please, Richard? Thank you very much. Cheers. Right, Malcolm's going to ask the question today to win the t-shirt. So Malcolm, if you want to ask the question, I want somebody to put their hand up in the bar if you know the answer, and I'll pick you and you can come forward and answer the question.
Well, I think that a lot of you will be aware that my home debut for Newcastle was a victory over Liverpool, in which I scored a hat-trick. But the question that I'm asking is, who did I actually make my debut against for Newcastle United?
Right at the back. Okay, mate, do you want to come forward? Straight at the back. He's the first hand up. Okay.
You certainly were the first hand up.
Right, if you just want to turn around there and give us your answer.
Benfica.
Oh.
No. We played Benfica, but that was a pre-season friendly. We're looking for league debut.
Next
league
hand.
debut.
Yes, mate. Go on.
What a fucking top man. Just against Leeds United.
No, it wasn't them either.
Oh, it's a tough one. Yes, mate, come forward.
Crystal Palace.
It was Crystal Palace. Well done indeed. We got absolutely stopped by them.
I got a photo of you together. You got one? Good stuff. Okay, we're going to ask prediction, Malcolm, for today's game.
All done? Okay, well done.
We'll get a prediction from you as well. Prediction, Malcolm, for today's game.
Go on. What's your prediction?
2-1 win.
That's not a bad one. I seriously would like to see Newcastle go out there and be determined to reverse what happened down at Carrow Road. I really do feel that they should go out there and start sticking the ball in the net on a serious level. And I hope that Steve Bruce has booted a lot of backsides after the debacle of last weekend. I'm going to go for Newcastle to win 3-0.
1-1 draw for me, I'm afraid. I'm not as optimistic. That's all from NUFC Matters from the Dog and Parrot. Well done to our competition winner. Thanks everybody for watching. We're going to play out with the Thieves.